Good evening, this is Alan Ayers and I am just checking in. Tonight I'm going to be talking to you about aligning your urgent care's operating hours with patient demand. So when we think of urgent care, we think of a retail business or a retail delivery channel for medicine. And when we think of retail, we often think of the 24-hour Walmart Supercenter, the In-N-Out Burger that's open till 2 a.m., the Chick-fil-A that's closed on Sunday. In retail, we know that a core defining feature of a retail brand is its hours. Well, really the same goes for urgent care. Urgent care is all about convenience and accessibility, being available when patients need us. Ideally, an urgent care center should be open 24 hours a day. However, the problem that we have in urgent care, as with retail, is that labor is the #1 expense item on an urgent care's profit and loss statement. So unlike a restaurant, however, that, if a restaurant's having a slow evening, they'll point to a waiter, point to a busser, you can go home early. Urgent care centers typically cannot send staff home early if the patient demand's not there. So therefore, it's really critical when staffing for urgent care that the staffing levels and the operating hours align with when patients are using the center. We get asked by clients frequently, should we extend our hours, should we contract our hours? And the answer really depends on how patients are currently using the center. So the starting process for setting the hours of an existing center or evaluating the hours of an existing center is to plot the number of patient visits, the number of patient arrivals by hour, by day a week. And if you do that, you'll find that most urgent care centers see a fairly significant spike first thing in the morning. So let's say a center opens at 8, you have patients who can be late for work, they can be late for school, they can't necessarily miss work or school, and oftentimes we find consumer behavior, even if a patient's not feeling well in the evening, they'll typically want to sleep on it and come to urgent care first thing in the morning. So most urgent care centers start out the day with a fairly significant spike that can result in extended wait times, it can create throughput issues, it can create patient satisfaction issues, particularly when that morning jolt doesn't really resolve until around noon or 1 p.m. Then most centers getting into the afternoon hours, you'll see a flattening. 2 to 3 is typically very slow. Those are ideal times to shift scheduled appointments. So anything from a workers' comp recheck to a travel medicine consult to a DOT physical, almost anything where you can steer patients to a specific time of day, you'll typically want to schedule appointments during that 2 to 3 hour lull in the afternoon, just to flatten the ebb and flow of your patient volume. And then most centers we see get a second wind after school lets out, after work lets out, around 4 or 5 in the evening, and patient volumes are relatively flat until closing. Now, when evaluating patient demand, most centers that are considering extending hours look to extending the evening hours. Let's say you have a center that currently closes at 8 p.m. You're trying to determine whether that center should actually be open till 9 or 10. I would encourage you to look at patient volumes going into the closing hours and identify whether you're seeing a spike up into the close or a gradual decline into the close. If you're seeing a gradual decline into the close, that means that your closing time is appropriate. That sometimes, particularly evenings and afternoons on weekends, we may see a decline of several hours. You might actually have some money losing hours. You might want to actually contract your closing hours. But in most cases, if you see a sharp spike into the close, that could indicate some pent-up demand. And in that case, if your center closes at 8 and you have patients that have medical needs at 9, those patients are likely going to the ED or freestanding ED. By extending the hours of your center, you can potentially increase your total patient revenue, your total patient volume. So I would, again, encourage you towards the end of the day, are you seeing a spike into the close or a gradual fade out into the close? Now, most of the time, when a center is considering extending hours, I encourage them to look at extending the hours in the morning. So if your center currently opens at 9, consider opening at 8. If you open at 8, consider opening at 7. Now, granted, there are always individuals, particularly if your center does occupational medicine, who just need to get in first thing in the morning, and whatever time you open, they're going to be there. More than likely, opening earlier, you will not increase your total visit census. However, you can somewhat flatten that morning spike, which can result in shorter wait times, improve throughput, improve patient satisfaction, which translates to repeat visits and positive word of mouth. But again, when we consider urgent care, when looking at the operating hours, as with all features of your service offering, you really need to consider consumer behavior and patient demand. You need to have the minimum operating hours to serve patients when they need urgent care, but if you have too many excessive hours, that'll hit your profitability directly. So success in urgent care really is the balance of balancing supply and demand, balancing the staffing levels in your center with patient volume or patient utilization of the center. So that's it for this episode of Just Checking In. If you have any questions, I would love to address those on a future episode. Please feel free to email us at Practice Velocity at the address on your screen. And until next time, this is Alan Ayers, Just Checking In.